Together we win. That's the theme of the panel discussion that we have at the fifth edition of ET Auto Retail Forum. And we are joined by the stalwarts of the industry right now, cutting across this segment. But before we go to introduce the esteemed panel members, let me tell you the topic is OEM dealership relationship, means how the dealers and OEMs can come together to deal with the crisis. And in this 9 months of crisis, how have the dealership and OEM come together to weather the crisis and the uncertainty that has gripped the automobile industry? So let me introduce to you today's esteemed panel members to discuss on this topic. We have Mr. Rakesh Srivastava, Managing Director, Nissan Motor India. We have Mr. Shashank Srivastava, Executive Director, Maruti Suzuki India. We have Mr. Rakesh Sharma, Executive Director, Bajaj Auto. We have Mr. Yadvinder Singh Guleria, Director, Sales and Marketing, Honda Motorcycles. We also have Mr. Vinkesh Gulati, President, FADA, Federation of Automobile Dealers Association. He will be representing the dealer body. We have Mr. Rakesh Sharma ji. He will be talking from the three-wheeler and two-wheeler point of view. We have Mr. Rakesh Srivastava will be talking on passenger vehicle. Mr. Shashank Srivastava, of course, the biggest, representing the biggest passenger vehicle manufacturer. So he will be pitching for the overall passenger vehicle market. Welcome to ET Auto panel discussion and ET Auto Retail Forum. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining in and taking out time for this. Before I start, let's give Vinkesh the first opportunity to understand what were the expectation of the dealerships when it comes to support, and how have the journey been so far in the last 9 months of coronavirus, and that impacted the entire segment. Did you get enough support from the OEM? Was that enough for you guys, and how the dealership has coped with this entire crisis?
Thanks, Nabil, for having me. I was thinking actually I'm at the receiving end with all the manufacturer, the body, the seniors there. But thanks for giving me the first opportunity. No doubt, see, the relationship between dealers and the OEMs are very, very important. And Caterpillar MD in 1986 wrote in an article, April 96 wrote in an article that if they have good dealers on the ground who can understand the customers and we have good relationship with the company, no company can go bust and they can sell any product on the ground, even if it is not as compared to the competition. So no doubt the ground, the foot soldiers are important. But yes, you said COVID came in March, so a lot of things changed. So there was a pre-COVID relationship and post-COVID relationship. So pre-COVID was still very frugal. Things were happening fine. So wherever the business was, but post-COVID, this relationship, at least in most of the manufacturer, really bonded well. And whatever we have seen, the growth on the passenger vehicle segment and a bit in two-wheeler segment, I'll term it to the good support from the manufacturer all across, barring some, but most of the manufacturers have come forward to support the dealers during the time of 2 months, in which 1 month was actually zero. April, May, some dealers still do good numbers, some numbers, not good numbers. So, and the kind of support we got from OEMs, somewhere cash transfer support, which has never happened in the industry before. The money was transferred to dealers' account, or some advances given to manage the salaries, manpower support, and whatever the stocks we were there. A lot of companies even offered the interest cost. So many things happened, and those 2 months really, we as a dealer body, we are thankful to all the manufacturers who came out and supported the dealers. It has helped us a lot because one thing more, it also taught us that we as a dealer body was working in a very, very high turnover base. So we never thought that 0 month will be a problem for us because money was always there, vehicle was selling, coming. But in this time, when 2 months happened, we actually came to know the kind of dealer margins we have, the kind of savings we have, it becomes very difficult without the support of the manufacturers, which we got. And it taught
Thank
us a lot, actually. It really taught us with the support of manufacturers how to cope these types of times. So
Thank
thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, Vinkesh, for being so nice to your OEMs. Let's come to hear from the OEM. Let's start with Shashank ji and understand from him. Did you get enough support in terms of when you were accelerating your sales or you were trying to ramp up to the volumes that went down to zero? And we have seen it's been very quick recovery that we have seen in the passenger vehicle segment. So how much will you credit to the dealers, and what were the high points in terms of dealers proactiveness or the support that you have received, and what else would you have expected that could have improved the situation? I'll start with Shashankji, then I'll ask the same question from others.
Thank you, Nabil, for having me on this discussion, first of all. And also thank you, Vinkesh ji, for a very nice introductory remarks that you made. I completely agree with him in the sense that the dealers, we believe, are the most important part of this chain of transferring the products to the final customer. So in a traditional setup, Nabil, just before this pandemic thing, the thought process was the product and the process of selling will be decided by the OEM. And then the service part, the actual interaction with the consumer, that is taken care of by the dealer. So dealer in that sense is also a brand extension of the OEMs. And as such, he's, to my mind, the differentiator, because now you see a convergence despite the introduction of new technologies. There is a convergence in terms of the processes and the products that is coming in the market. So service is, and also remember that mobility is now a service. So it is not just about product. And in that sense, I feel the role of dealer is the most important. So what Caterpillar MD said in 1996 with Vinkesh ji quoted is actually more relevant today than ever before. He's the most important. And I think that is where the OEMs first realization should happen, that the dealer is the first customer for the OEM. And in that sense, I think he's not an intermediary. And we realized this during the this pandemic, that the role of the dealer is extremely, in fact, more essential than what we imagined before. And I must say that Vinkesh ji has, as Vinkesh ji pointed out, with the collaborative effort, we could bounce back in the industry. And we could see volume. Remember, with zero sales in April, I think there was a huge cash flow problem. Our industry works on big cash flows, any cash flow. We realized, in fact, I'm very honest to admit that we realized that we have made a lot of mistakes, which suddenly came out, whether it is in terms of the financial importance which was being given. I think the first priority should be given to dealers so that they are profitable. We should not have too many dealers in a territory. It's also very important. We sort of realize the inventory management becomes very important. So I think we did all that. And as Vinkesh ji said, we transferred a lot of money as far as Maruti Suzuki was concerned in forms of various forms, whether it was inventory support on spare parts, even on true value cars, support on vehicles, inventory, support on even manpower, rationalization of manpower, rationalization on infrastructure part. All these, I think, we believe now very strongly more than ever. And I take it as a very positive for the OEMs, the realization and the fact that we need to collaborate even more deeply with dealers has been proved beyond doubt much more in this pandemic. And I salute the spirit of the dealers. Despite their difficulties, they have been our brand ambassadors in that sense. And the customer satisfaction ratings which we have seen during and
We will
after the
talk
pandemic
about
has
the
been the same. Yeah.
we'll talk about the penetration and the means and the ways the OEM and dealers can further collaborate for the
Yes,
mutual benefits. But before that, I'll
definitely.
go to Mr. Guleria and understand from him, as a two-wheeler manufacturer, how was his experience? Because the recovery in two-wheeler has been slower compared to the passenger vehicle. So how has been the experience there? What has been the learning in times of crisis like this?
Yeah, I would say that both Mr. Vinkesh as well as Mr. Shashank has summarized it quite well, and they have presented the both sides, from the dealer's point of view and from manufacturer perspective. And as we all are representing the mobility business, I would say, and we are our vehicles or we are always there on the roads. So I will try to give a correlation with what we see on the road and the relationship. I would say it was like a T junction, which we see on the road, and T stands here for trust and transparency. This is where both the dealers as well as the OEMs, they met together and made this bond of trust and transparency much stronger. We all realize those surplus reserves which were there, whether it is on the dealer side, on the manufacturer's side. When the pandemic arrived, suddenly this surplus reserve became the valuable resource, and it all happened because of the collaborative approach. And it's a matter of fact, we all know that the moment of truth from the customer's standpoint for any brand is the first contact with the dealers. And in our industry, if somebody has to say or earmark the COVID warriors, it was the network. Because who opened first? The network opened first. There was a huge inventory, or the inventory which was always available. They took that risk. Obviously, in collaboration with the manufacturer, they followed all the SOPs as well as the local regulations and opened up their respective dealership as well as the service center, and exposed themselves as well as their own staff to provide services to the customer who were in the need. And in the initial phase, the need was with all those who were employed in the essential services. They were using their four-wheeler or two-wheelers. They needed them to be maintained well, or their vehicles which were parked for almost 3 months and not being used. So they came to the network. This network of respective OEMs took care of them, took all the risk, and provided the confidence that all the customers or intenders who are visiting the representing respective OEMs are in the safe hands, and without any concern to the safety or health, they can come to the network and get their services done. So I sometimes, it is the pandemic or something very drastic need to happen to highlight that strength of the bonding. It would have been there, but maybe some complaints would have been there from either side. But once the pandemic arrived, we are all seeing the good aspects of it, because that was the universal emotion, the empathy towards each other, and finally, standing together to face this big challenge in front of everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Guleria. I'll come to you, Mr. Sharma. I'll talk about three-wheeler also, apart from two-wheeler. Three-wheeler was one of the business that has been worst hit. In such a scenario, how have you been able to, support your dealer partner, and what was the expectation from the dealer partner, and how did you deal with it?
Thank you very much, Nabil. The three-wheeler sector is really lagging behind in the recovery, as we all know, and it's only reached 40% levels of same period last year. And obviously that puts in a huge amount of pressure. The magnificent thing about the pandemic has been, personally for me, to witness at very close quarters the belief which the dealer community has continued to have in the sector, in the business, and in their respective OEs. I've hardly come across instances where people have abandoned either the sector or the OEM. And that is continuing to be demonstrated in the three-wheeler sector. This for me is actually the most important takeaway. And like they say that nothing unites India more than cricket or war. And I think that is what has got demonstrated. It's only that once the crisis has resolved itself, hopefully the spirit will remain. In terms of, the specific point which you raised about how one can continue to support the dealerships for three-wheelers because the crisis is a bit elongated for them. There is always a dilemma in the OEs that are we going to subsidize or are we going to bolster capability? It's that age-old parable about giving a fish and teaching how to fish. And when a crisis is going to sort of continue for such a long time, I don't think that anyone has the wherewithal to subsidize and artificially take dealerships over this crisis. And there have been instances where people have got affected, some badly, and our whole attempt is been to focus our attention actually foremost on the auto rickshaw drivers, which are really the most important thing for both the dealership and the OEs, and go back to them and see. And I can tell you, working with their unions, that they are perhaps amongst the communities which have felt the brunt of this pandemic, migrant laborers, then above them. And so that sector, and our first attempt has been to see how we can, with whatever little resources at our command, help them. And of course, then to take a more mature view and try to help the dealerships tide over, try and see how the business can revive, try and see how some sub-segments within the three-wheeler segments like, cargo, etc., have been performing better, how to, get the dealerships to, that's a good fallout, how to progress faster on the cargo segment, etc. So we have focused our energies specifically in the three-wheeler sector more in terms of direct intervention in helping the auto rickshaw drivers and for the dealers in terms of bolstering their capabilities to tide over this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sharma. I'll take now Mr. Srivastava's comment. Rakesh Srivastava ji, the situation for you has been completely different, you were working on a very small margin, small network. Now suddenly you have a superstar product coming in and massive bookings for those products. What is your expectation from your dealer partner, and how maybe many dealers would be, how are you going to distribute those bookings, and how are you going to strengthen your relation with the dealership? What are you going to do in such a different time? This is completely different scenario for Nissan. Pandemic at one point in time, at the same time you have one of the best products that you have launched at this time in point in time. So
thank you, Nabil, and greeting to the panel members. Yes, these were crisis times. And when we talk about crisis, this was a crisis which came in immediately after the BS4 transition to BS6 transition. While BS4 to BS6 transition largely raised a question mark on sustainability, the pandemic crisis actually raised a big question mark on the survival itself. And when we look at the auto industry, it's a family. And in that family, I would say is that the most important member, right, who is in touch with the customer is the channel partner. They are the face of the auto industry. And the kind of the way the auto industry worked towards and demonstrated to the entire country, I would say is commendable in the sense is that we created, or we were on the story of resilience, a story of positivity, a story of innovation. All the three were displayed by the auto industry. And that is the reason why such an important member of the economy, where almost 7% of the GDP is auto industry, something like where you employ 3.7 crores of people and generate such an employment, and such a strong resilience being shown. And that's the reason I would say is that with the innovation, with the positivity, auto industry was one of the first to come out of it. And it could have not happened if the channel partners, the first face of the family, the front face of the family had not played their role. I think one of the most important roles that they played is first of all, right, ensuring safety. Because business continuity would come in only at the second stage. First is safety of themselves, their team members. I think that was the most important part. The second part when it came over was also ensuring, right, along with that, the business continuity in terms of the servicing the customer requirements, because vehicles were on road, customers needed service, ensuring online, ensuring the customers were attended to 24/7, and ensuring that all this was done with all the safety protocols in place. While doing so, I think one of the most critical part or the critical role that was played by the channel partners was also looking forward towards, along with the OEMs, contributing to the CSR in the senses to the public at large. There were migrant laborers which were moving from one place to another place. There were needs of the society. Many of the plants were not working. You had other challenges in the marketplace where unemployment was happening or underemployment was there. And the channel partners, along with the OEM family, the whole family came together in terms of looking at this particular need. So as our friend said, I think in any crisis, there are a few things that are very much important. One is cash flow. I think in that, the OEMs, along with the channel partners, work towards ensuring that, yes, there were supports in terms of ensuring advances were given, claims were settled earlier, structural supports were provided, or credit was taken care of, and the payments that were due were managed. While the cash flow was being taken care, I think the other main aspect is in terms of managing car flow. Towards this, I would say is launching a new brand or launching a new model always excites the market and always brings in many more customers who have been sitting or have been deferring their particular products. Yes, towards this at Nissan, we were able to launch a big, bold and beautiful and a charismatic SUV. Happy to say that, as Nabil, you said, that yes, in a single month, and that too in a month of December, where few model launches happen, we were able to pick up something like 32,800 bookings and excite the customers. Yes, Vinkesh.
Thank you so much. The initial remark from all of you paints a very beautiful, scenario. We do not have any hiccups. We do not have any thorn in our ways. Of course, it's one of the best scenario to have. Dealers are saying they've got all the support. OEMs are saying they got marvelous performance from the dealer partners also. But let's come back to some real stuff. A dealership has always been complaining about two things. The cost of capital is very high in India, and the capital goes largely into funding the inventories. So inventory has been high. That is another problem, and that further aggravate the situation for the dealership in times like this when cash is king and cash is nowhere to be seen. Second, the big Taj Mahals that, probably in the last panel discussion, I remember Mr. Srivastava, Shashank Srivastava only mentioned that we may not have the big Taj Mahals. So after this pandemic, Mr. Shashank Srivastava, how do you see these two pain point of your dealer partners being dealt with? Then I'll ask everybody to join in. What are they doing to assuage or reduce the burden from these two corners coming up? Starting with you, since you are the biggest player, you are the trendsetter, Mr. Srivastava.
Yeah, thank you, Nabil. And I think you mentioned a very important aspect of dealer operation and the dealer problems which are being faced by them, and that is profitability. I think that is one of the biggest and the most frequently mentioned problem from the dealers. And unfortunately, OEMs have not always been taking it as the major criteria. Generally believing in an old theory that you have to move the metal from your factory to the dealers, to the sometimes to the detriment of the financial position of the dealers. So I mean, my view is that this is not the only problem which dealer faces. And I'll be very candid, as you said, it may not be so good as everybody seems to be mentioning. I think I'll come to that financial point very quickly, Nabil. But before that, I must say the first problem, which and I've been in this industry for more than 30 years. I think, and I always try to inculcate in amongst the younger people in the area offices, in the regional offices, the zonal offices who come in touch with dealers. First of all, I think you should be transparent and build that trust with dealers. Dealers are not open. They are not, I mean, we have to create an environment where they can freely give a feedback. And remember, they are the only people who are in touch with consumers. What I have found is, and there are instances, and I take the blame myself, that there are instances we work on data, looking at it and take broad decisions without enough consultation with the dealer. So I think a dealer viewpoint has to be brought in, a mechanism of feedback, communication, transparency, trust, so that he feels very open in expressing himself. A lot of dealers, and we have many committees, we have these frequent saying, but there are places where I feel there are many dealers who still don't feel comfortable because we may have people who may disagree with their viewpoint, and as a result sometimes dealers say things which which the manufacturer wants to listen anyway. So they just want to hear the good things, and so that transparency and environment has to be built. I think that is one major problem. Apart from, I'll come to the financial aspect, of course, Nabil, but this I believe is a major problem. Remember, a dealer is a big industrialist. In some sense, he's employing sometimes thousands of people, the bigger groups of dealers. And I think we need to not only take feedback on product pricing sector, but also give the adequate respect which he deserves. And remember, he's your brand ambassador. He's the guy who's actually facing the customer. We are trying to build that culture in Maruti Suzuki. We have succeeded to some extent. There have been failures, of course, Nabil, as is always the case, but we are trying to get to that. On the financial aspect, and I think we should not talk only of margins. I remember in the earlier conversation, Nabil, which we had, in which I think Vinkesh was also there, we are talking not just about margin increases. We are also talking about the revenue increases. Need not be only from selling margins. It is from service. It is from after sales. It is from accessories. It is from extended warranty. It is from insurance. It is from finance. So OEMs have a responsibility to make sure that the dealer has a good revenue stream, not just from selling vehicles, but over a long period of time through other revenue streams, which I just spoke about. Also, you must remember that there is times when manufacturers push metal to the inventory, and inventory is a very high. A lot of times it is related to giving some targets, giving that you will get this incentive, etc. But probably sometimes the inventory cost is higher than what he earns from this thing. So I think we need to realize, and I keep telling my field people that it is not about you have to achieve target, but you have to achieve target making sure the dealer is profitable. That is the responsibility of OEM. And I must say, not only that, the growth of the dealers is also the responsibility of OEM. And we are trying to implement that. And how do you do the growth? You give him some new territories, or you give them some new ways of expanding, new places, new businesses. You have a wide portfolio which a manufacturer can actually help dealer to grow. And you will be happy. In fact, for Maruti Suzuki, I can say most of our dealers have been there. There has been hardly any dealer who has gone out of our system for the reason of financial and not being profitable. But there are, of course, a lot of room for improvement.
I have come across a few of them from all brands, including Maruti Suzuki, though.
Yes. I think there are, of course, you have to distinguish between where the dealer himself is responsible or our model of business is responsible. So the model of business is what I was referring to. If a dealer, for example, does a diversion of funds from a short term to a long term for infrastructure or for some other businesses, and then he goes out of the business, is something which I'm not going to discuss here, because nothing can be done in that case, because we have to stick to some business proprietary in terms of the fund management by the dealer as also by the OEMs. So I'm not referring to those cases where people have gone out because of some funds which were diverted. So, but the thing which I'm mentioning is OEM have a direct responsibility to make a business model which a dealer is interested in, which makes him profitable. We can talk of relationships forever, but the basic purpose of business is to make money. And the dealer, when he is profitable, he puts his entire heart and soul into the business. That's what I found. And that, I believe, is the thing which all OEMs need to collaborate with the dealers and see that that model, a business model is built, which makes them profitable. At the same time, having that long-term relationship and loyalty built with the final customer, which for whom we all exist, both the OEM as well as the dealers.
Thank you, Shashankji, for putting the exact point. Of course, you talked about, inventory easing that dealership talks about. You talked about how can you take the feedback from the dealers, bring them together in terms of your product strategy and all. I'll go to Vinkesh and understand how much of it is happening, has it improved or not. But before that, I'll understand from others also what are their point in this direction. Guleria ji, your thoughts.
Yeah, Nabil, I definitely agree with what Mr. Shashank has mentioned. Any which ways, I think when you started this topic, you first mentioned that the cash is the king, right? So I take it forward from there. If cash is the king, together we have to also understand that management of cash is King Kong.
Okay.
And return on investment is the Godzilla.
Okay.
So what we all are here to exist in the business is that we are getting that return on investment. And that is why, they are in business. That is why the OEMs will also exist if the business is expanding, extending. Now, key part which Mr. Shashank also mentioned, that the business model has to be created in such a way that it is sustainable and it is growing in. It's sustainable. Okay, you can maintain at a particular level, but no, again, it has to grow from different segment, because it's not only about sales. So he mentioned about a couple of other things which will also remain very, very challenging, because the market itself is evolving. Like when we say insurance or we talk about retail finance, there are many customers who would like to do it on their own. They are doing it digitally. They don't want to buy it from the dealership, or they don't want to take retail finance. So those opportunities, some of the old opportunities which we keep on repeating, may not exist in the similar way today. So what we need to guide and work together is adapting to the new normal, and also see the new emerging opportunities at our network to increase the scope of the additional revenues at our dealership. So it is a ever emerging and evolving kind of discussion between the OEMs and the network. Also, our team in the field, they also have that proper, like in Japanese we say gemba ear, being on the spot, but carefully not filtering that kind of information, as he rightly mentioned, what I want to hear or what OEM wants to hear. So we should create an environment in a way where people are free to express their viewpoints, and there is a respect for individual, respect for the network feedback. Now, whether we will be acting in one go or we will have a long-term direction on that, so the trust will only come where in a phase-wise manner, there is some action which is reflected from OEMs in terms of the feedback which has been collected from the network. So that is the only way that this required and most important thing of trust is developed further. But if we only hear, we create a forum, but we don't act, then it is only a lip service, or I would say ear service, but not actionable. So let's keep on doing those action. Let us get the taste of that success. Obviously, some mistakes and some errors will be there, but that should not discount the real effort which has gone in making that attempt.
Thank you, Mr. Guleria. Indeed, we need to put all the Godzillas and King Kongs in order if we want to move ahead. But before, now, Rakesh Sharma ji, your thoughts on this?
Let me come to that, but let me begin by saying that I think this issue of stocks and inventory is very important, but it has been sort of given a very huge voice. And, fundamentally, at the core, I don't know if there is any company anywhere in the world which believes that it can become stronger by making the dealer weaker, that it can capture a huge market share sustainably by dumping the dealer. I mean, it is a concept which is very difficult for me to believe that a company will, as a corporate practice. However, there are departures to this, and they could be arise out of two reasons. One is, at a very tactical level, some fellow chasing some target or this, that, and the other. Or secondly, it can arise from a different perspective, which a dealer may have, I mean, a perspective which is different from OE's perspective. And that is one area where I feel that there is a huge scope for communication, and not just communication. It's not just a one-way communication of what the strategy is, but it is about it's about getting on the same side, and it's about institutionalizing and socializing the perspective of what is happening in the industry, how the OE is planning to take it, what is its strategy, how it is taking it forward. I think this aspect, I will confess, I can't make a comment for the industry, but I'll confess for us, is an undernourished area. And I believe that more you do is not enough. And particularly in these times, when the paradigms are changing so often and so fast, that what is true today may not be true day after tomorrow. And therefore, the need to communicate and ensure that both the dealer and the OE are making the same movie, it becomes absolutely paramount. And a lot of the problems sometimes I find occurs because of that. And I accept that in this respect, we have to take the lead. See, another complexity which comes in making this happen is that there, at least in the two-wheeler industry, you will find that the spectrum of dealerships is very wide. You will have very small store dealerships which sell 100 units per month to very large dealerships which employ 1,000 people, and a corporate has to develop the ability to communicate and carry along and make people understand in this entire spectrum. And I don't think we do that skillfully. And to just the question which you posed, I think there is, forget the dealerships. I think the OEs in the next 5 years will have to change enormously. That's my belief. There is a big storm coming, and I don't know when and how it will land, but surely there will be mega changes in the auto industry. And it's the OEs who have to dance to the new tune, and therefore understand the situation is going to become more ambiguous, more volatile. Okay, we are all thinking the pandemic is over and now it's all going to be tranquil. I don't think, because even before the pandemic, it was referred to that there were lots of changes. The pandemic will occur in some new avatar, which will require the OE to respond to it, and which will require the dealership to respond to it. So this communication platform, this nourishment of this perspective will have to be done, will have to be constantly done. And that is the sort of fundamental, it'll be the fulcrum on which the whole change will be made to happen.
Certainly, the times are not going to be again same that we had in the pre-COVID time, and this has certainly accelerated the transition or disruption that we were expecting for a long time. And you rightly pointed out that, there are different, diverse kind of dealers. Some are small, some are in the rural, some are in the urban, and you do not have a proper mechanism to communicate to all of them in an effective manner. That's a very important, aspect that you have brought in. Mr. Rakesh Srivastava, how do you see things changing for the dealership? I pointed out two major aspects in terms of inventory funding, in terms of cost of real estate, or the investment that the dealerships are making nowadays or were making in the pre-COVID time. How do you think that will change? Then I'll get for the final word from Vinkesh.
Nabil, I'll address this through an example of ours. But to me, it is that in any crisis, the connect, the communication, and collaboration is the key, which basically means is that from hearing to listening is most important. And I think this is the most important aspect for in any partnership, just hearing to listening. And this only can come in when you connect, you communicate, and you collaborate. Cash flow, car flow, very much important, but co-creating the future is the most important, because after the crisis is over, what do you take forward is co-creation. Towards this, let me bring out, we had a very big challenge. We were to bring in a new product. And when you're bringing in a new product, and the kind of challenge that we had in terms of the COVID, where lots of things were happening in the marketplace, and assurance to the customer, to the channel partner, how do you go about in terms of bringing in the product into the marketplace? I think first thing that foremost that happened is that our channel partners came forward and they said that, yes, we know there is a challenge in terms of the spread, the reach. And they said that, okay, we will invest. And we co-created a future by way of bringing in small retail formats. In the top 5 cities, almost 20 sales outlets came in, and all of them were one car display, a single car display, coming at a very, very low investment capital being brought in there. And I think that is what we call it as co-creation. For a launch of a product, let me tell you, for the all-new Nissan Magnite, we did not appoint a single additional dealer. Not even a single dealer was appointed. This is what we call exactly as controlled expansion. All the opportunities were given to the existing channel partners, even when there was an attrition of manpower, because lots of manpower actually moved over from various places that they were, because they migrated to their own places, and some of our channel partners were left with very little of sales and service manpower. We went ahead and recruited almost around 100 plus manpower for the showrooms of ours called geniuses, and they attended to the customers. This is again co-creation. We knew that in these times, a customer, because of safety issues on COVID and kind of challenges that were there in the marketplace, may not visit the showrooms. On that particular part, again, when you listen to your channel partners and work along with them, a phygital model was created, physical plus digital, where a virtual showroom, online sales, online service, and virtual test drive was created, where the customer got to experience the product on the virtual medium. In fact, even virtual test drive being done, and then walking over into the showroom to validate his choice or his decision, and just needed to spend very little amount of time. I'm just giving these examples because this is what exactly happened, and it all came in by way of the insights of our own internal customers. So the point I'm making is that we all have to co-create a future. Controlled expansion, changing the retail format, ensuring, Nabil, is rather than going to the model of stock to sell, towards to taking the other model, sell to demand. And that's the reason why, right, in the beginning itself, based on the response of it, then we decided that we will not be flooding our channel partners with the stock. We will create it step by step, not right in the beginning, bringing in multiple productions, keeping the stock at the dealership and then attending. No, we said, you get the demand and we will supply to the demand. And that's the reason then we took the decision of starting the third shift, employing 1,000+ workforce at the plant. And that is where I would appreciate the channel partners have gone ahead and said, we will also employ 500+ odd people, right, at the sales and service outlets of ours, because we are confident that we can address, and the business model that you are co-creating is a business model where it not only sustainability, we will be able to see growth, we'll be able to see profit, we'll be able to see a co-created future. I think looking at that is the most important part. Living the life of a channel partner, I think, is the most important part. Here, the relationship in terms of crisis does not have to be of an adult to adult. At times, it has to change to a parent to a child.
Very good.
Channel partners of ours are basically, we are the ones who give them the birth. But at some point of time, we take this relationship, adult to adult, and we start becoming very demanding on them. I think that's okay, but not okay in a crisis, not okay every time, right? In these times, the relationship has to take a different dynamic. And I think when you do that, they come forward. We have seen a live example, I can tell you, is in case when we were bringing in the new product, we saw the live example. And I can tell you, I'd like to thank the channel partners that they co-created a success. The success of All New Magnite is their success, and we will live it.
You have raised a very valid and pertinent point. And let's see if the other panel agrees or not. You talked about sell to demand. That's a completely different and a win-win situation for the dealer. You talked about hearing to listening. We are talking, Mr. Srivastava, Shashank Srivastava also talked about feedback in his opening remark. That was very important. Co-creating stuff, going, giving more opportunity to the existing dealer. You also agree, Mr. Shashank Srivastava also pointed to the same thing. I would like to come to you, Vinkesh, and understand what a great OEM we have right now. They all are talking about how to help the dealer partner, how to take them along in the growth journey. How can they grow you as a corporation? We are talking about all this, but we have seen in the last 2 years, over 300 dealerships have been shut down. And it's being, more often than not, credited to bad management by the dealership or diversion of funds to the other business that we definitely see sometimes happen. But do you think that can the OEMs absolutely absolve themselves from any kind of responsibility or any kind of linking to the failure of this over 350 or 300 dealerships that we saw in the last 1.5 or 2 years?
Nabil, thank you for this panel discussion. So I feel once this is over, the recording can be shared to all the OEMs that this is the way how Indian market can be conquered, whatever market share you want.
So
I agree.
Why do you need a recording when everything is in place already, as being said by OEM? Are you hinting that it's not actual?
So see, there are a lot of there are black sheeps everywhere. So like you said, 300 dealers. So there even financial issues was discussed where dealers were diversion of fund was there, short term to long term. So there are things, and
they were not diverting the funds. I'm telling you, those who are surviving, thriving, they have also diverted the funds.
So Nabil, there is a difference. Diversion of fund to some other industry is a different thing where I agree the dealers are at fault. But diverting to expand the dealership setup, in that OEMs are hand to hand, because the kind of relationship we have, there are area managers, there are particular your dealer manager from OEM, there are regional managers, zonal managers, and everybody is in discussion of the dealers regularly. And in a month, they talk 10 times for the billing fund. So they know how the dealers are. But if a dealer is expanding, opening up another dealership, and his financial situation is not that smooth, it's a daily affair. Everybody knows that things are being managed, or what kind of channel funding is happening. So you rightly said, it's not the OEM's fault, but they cannot be absolved also, because they know that it's the comfort where the seniors of the manufacturers are with the dealers, so they think they will manage. But normally it is not like that, and things go bad. And majority cases you must see in all the metros and major towns, these are issues because the investment is high. So Nabil, I want to shift to some other point here. So we had done a COVID support where 2000 dealers have responded. So we had asked what you want from your OEM in the future. So the top four thing which came, I'm thankful Shashank said that margins are not important, but we dealers have now upgraded from margin, asking for margin, to profitability. So the topmost thing was return on investment or improving profitability. Second, I'm thankful Shashank again said that about dealer rationalization. Second point was that which came up. The third point came up was the importance of digital, and due to that, reduction in infrastructure size. And like you said, Taj Mahal infrastructure, like Rakesh ji also shared small one car outlets and all that. That was the third point. Fourth most important thing came up was the better dealer OEM coordination. I'm sorry, Nabil, there are 4 or 5 OEMs here, but we have written as an association to SIAM that there should be a proper, effective, synchronized dealer advisory council at all the OEMs, which I'm sorry to say, most of the OEMs are not having it. So there are some very good examples, like some of where they are in this panel also. There are very good examples where the DAC has done wonders in giving the feedback to the manufacturers, even at the level of R&D, where the vehicles are being designed, where even the processes are designed, where the service process is designed, or even how to service a vehicle, not only the process. So there are a lot of good examples, and I've seen at least those companies, even if they don't have good market share, even they are not able to sell good, but the dealers are satisfied because they know that if they are in pain, they have a, you can say, a process where they can give their point to the senior managers, senior team leaders, or the seniors of the company, and they will react to. I'm thankful to Rakesh ji when he said about hearing and listening. My request is to add one thing also more. Rakesh ji would surely be doing it because he had said so. So to add the last thing, which is acting. So there are a lot of OEMs who were hearing before, then they started listening, but we not need actions also. So luckily, Magnite has been a very good success. They have really worked hard to make it a success, and I'm congratulating Rakesh ji for that. Our immediate past president has taken one more dealership from him for Magnite because of all this. So overall, a dealer wants a good product to sell, high numbers, and viability. He is happy in his small city, a small dealership if he gets all three. Once the problem is he thinks of an X profit. He doesn't expect to have 5X or 10X. He is happy with an X profit. But the problem is when the things doesn't go good, then he needs a person to hear, understand, and take him through in a way that he can still be viable. So there are a lot of things of profitability. At least he should be break even. So I know maybe my this comment will not be acceptable for many of you, but
It's
I
a
feel
session, and
this.
we all agree that open feedback is very important. Okay, so don't
What
be.
I'm asking is a proper systemized feedback. So feedback does happen. Every one of them I know call up dealers and take input. I know them personally, so I know that this is happening. But a proper DAC where once a quarter meeting happens, there is a proper agenda. There are team members which are involved in service one dealer, sales one dealer, processes, account, GST. A lot of this is happening and it is benefiting those manufacturers. That's my input.
Thank you, Vinkesh. And let me tell you all that this is an open discussion. Anybody wants to come in and make a comment, you're most welcome to come and comment. So if somebody has a comment, counter comment, then they can make, then I'll move to the next question. If not
Yeah,
so.
I have a comment
Yeah,
on
yeah,
what
Mr. Shiva.
Vinkesh ji said, and I think I broadly agree with him. And as regards the final proof of whether dealers are profitable or not, will be how long they are and how successful they are in continuing with an OEM. For example, in Maruti's case, I know if we have dealers who are there for almost 40 years, I'm sure they have been more than break even, which is what Vinkesh ji mentioned. I'm sure they would have made some profits. Secondly, Nabil, you mentioned about some dealers who might have closed, 300 of them. We have done extensive research along with some help from FADA itself. There are about 293 dealers who have closed in the last 5 years. 15 of them are Maruti Suzuki, and out of which I haven't seen a dealer out of those 15 who have closed because of of, of a complaint on a model of business. There are dealers who make more money, there are dealers who have less money. But having said that, I must say, and if there is anybody beyond these 15, and I have a list of those right in front of me,
So
and
just one small supplementary question. You are saying if completely they failed because of their own business model or their own acts. So
so
will you
three of
appoint,
them,
what's your mechanism? Do you not
yeah,
ask
so three of them.
now 300 number is huge.
Yeah, so I don't know about the other manufacturers. I can only talk about those 15. Three of them closed because there was a family disputes in between, and most of the others closed because of the diversion of funds. And I'm not saying that people are making enough money, by the way, because I don't agree with Vinkesh ji when he says break even is fine. Break even is not fine. There has to be a much bigger return. What I think Vinkesh ji mentioned was at least break even should be there. And
Yeah.
I fully, when it comes to the deal, appointing too many dealers or too less territory, not enough expansion, OEMs are responsible. I completely this thing, and it's not as if we have done no mistake. There are areas where we have made mistake, assuming a CAGR growth across the country, which hasn't happened. And I can name, for example, Punjab, or in fact, Mumbai, or in some places in NCR, where we have, assumed growth rates which have not happened in the last 5-7 years. So there are mistakes being made, absolutely, no doubt. And I completely, but the point is the proof of the pudding will be how the pudding actually tastes. That is reflected how long the dealership continues and how many of them for a particular OEM go along with them and are happy. And dealer satisfaction ratings is one of the things which I really look forward to. And I really saw those satisfaction ratings. And I also learned from the top, we were not at the top OEM there, but I rang up Vinkesh to find out what is it that makes that other OEM a top grade. And we are trying to incorporate those. And I think going forward, we will continue to make our efforts to make the dealers not only profitable, but also satisfied, and also at the same time to upgrade them, both in terms of technology upgrade, which Rakesh mentioned, as also I do hope that financial discipline will continue to play an important part in our relationship.
Interesting points. Rakesh Sharma ji, I just want to take your thoughts. You talked about disconnect in terms of connecting or communicating to the variety of dealer partners that we have. What are your thoughts in terms of making it more organized, more impactful in terms of communication? Because if we go back to Vinkesh Gulati's conversation, he's also talking about no proper feedback taking mechanism at the OEM level, number one. And even if there is a feedback, it's just a random feedback that is being taken, and there's almost no action. That's what he implied when he said. So do you agree to that? And how do you think can be corrected? Because your dealers are completely different, three-wheeler and two-wheeler, completely a different business model, different customer scenario, different, dealership.
I won't say that there is a disconnect, but I would say that there is a scope for improvement because things are going to be ambiguous and companies will have to keep flexing their strategies, and these will have to be explained not just to the dealers but to the employees as well. And the mechanism which one of the mechanisms which Vinkesh ji talked about, I think it's a good suggestion. It happens informally, but it's important to formalize. And most importantly, now I think there are technologies available for communication which can be leveraged very, very effectively. And I feel that both for the frontline employees, because at the end of the day, you can say whatever in a webcast or a podcast, but if the area manager who's meeting the dealer every second day does not echo the same thing or is that divergence, then the fault lines start to appear, So one is not saying that the responsibility is just met if there is a dealer advisory council and we communicate something to them. It is a process. It is a culture. I think the culture of making sure that the last man in the line, including, I would say, dealer manpower. I have come across many times between the dealer principal and dealer manpower, the strategy is not communicated. So between the company and its employee, I will go and talk to my employer and I'll say that, oh my God, we made this communication, but it has not been received in the same manner. So I, for one, believe that this whole subject of communication has to be holistically understood. Dealer advisory councils are an element of it. And this is going to form the bedrock going forward if we have to deal with, the changes which are yet to come. So at a suggestion level, of course, it's a very good suggestion.
Mr. Sharma, do you think now you will have less number of dealership or you will have smaller dealership more in number than the big ones? How are you going to, what is the learning and how will it reflect to people like me that, yes, I see some change shaping up in the automobile retailing?
I don't think that the pandemic is so dramatic that it has made us unlearn whatever we had learned. The basic principles of network management, of coverage remain same, and they have to keep getting customized. My own thinking is, and it is born out from also, our experiences in different countries when we go to, and we have to, when we enter as an unknown brand, and we have to create the confidence in local entrepreneurs to invest money in a brand which they've not heard or they've just only seen on a website. And that means we have to be really solid about our proposition to the dealers. And one striking difference which I find between India and the other countries of similar nature is the small size of our dealerships. The bigger groups are not getting interested. And I wonder, maybe my previous statement is not correct, but I wonder, in a country like Philippines, that one dealer principal can have 1,200 stores. I can't think of anybody in India who has that. How come a Philippines has and that company is listed in the stock exchange? In the Philippines, in Indonesia, in Mexico. But why India, with such a vast market, has not sprouted organizations which think that, and once you have an organization of that kind, which is listed in the stock market, this transparency, employing the best talent, the technologies, and the power which can happen between OE and the dealer is of a very different qualitative nature. And, maybe one of the changes which will be very good for the country is that if the dealerships become stronger and stronger and stronger and are able to ride the storm, the ups and downs. And it's not just a storm, frankly speaking. We shouldn't paint it so darkly. It is actually, it's a fantastic opportunity also, but the opportunity is coming in different forms. Yeah. And, we will need very capable people and both in the OEs and in the dealerships. So
leading to an unseen and unheard territory. That's what we can say. Guleria ji, where do you see the missing link when we talk about scalability or transparency from the dealer partner side. We hear a lot about their transparency levels are always under question. That's how can OEM play a role here? How can they encourage them to be transparent and probably become more organized and probably look for a scalability or form into a corporation?
So my take on this is, now we are, as far as the OEMs who have a considerable journey in the country, who have a long history, as Maruti, Mr. Shashank just mentioned, almost close to 40 years or so. There are many dealers. Now the point is that, do we have to continue to adapt the inputs of that generation or the new generation which is coming in? Many a times what we have found that the new generation itself, maybe Mr. Vinkesh can add on to it, they are not interested to take it forward, the automobile business. They want new startups or they want to do something else. Now this is the question. Some of the dealership, they are on a crossroad. How do we, as a OEM, there is a brand existing and represented by a particular group in the market. Next generation do not want to take it forward. And this dealership has never run on through professionals. There has been high involvement of the dealer main promoter. Now, this is the question. How do the OEM take it forward? The next generation don't want to take this business. This generation who is managing the business may run it another 2-3 years. They start telling the OEM, please find out somebody else, and then you need to develop the brand and all. So I think the ground realities cannot be only discussed on the surface. This topic is in 1 hour also cannot be discussed on your channel. It is just tip of the iceberg, what is visible and what we can discuss on a public platform. But there are issues which are fundamental issues. How OEMs as well as the generation who got this business inculcate that same philosophy of the OEM to the next generation, and while adapting to the evolving changes of the ecosystem of doing the business in a new way. So this is the challenge for the OEMs as well as for the dealership in the market, that we need to listen to the new generation. They may be less experienced, but this is what they are experiencing from their own peer group. They may be knowing of the new trends coming in. The same thing is for the OEM. We have the ZMs or the area sales manager, what we call by different name in the hierarchy. They are closer to the market. That young generation is more interactive. We are, those who may be in the leadership position are more comfortable with the generation where we have grown together. So let us not create those silos and the walls with the new generation or even the new dealership who are joining the family. Let us give us a fair diversity to the new dealers who are on your panel, those who have already seen the long history of the brand, because that is why the brand is where it is today. So having a mix of all those inputs, then we can move forward. But it is for sure that every manufacturer would like to have an ear close to the market, to be at the pulse of the market, take the feedback and act. And I think, again, at the end, it is the action. Because between good intentions and intended benefits lies the great wall of execution. That's what I normally say. So we have to break this great wall of execution and show that action through deliverables in the market and to our network.
Action through deliverables. And it's time to deal with the legacy issue. Probably we should not get, puzzled or remain closed in the legacy that we have. We need to accept the change and we need to look forward to the next generation and understand their thoughts as well. Rakesh Srivastava, what's your take on this?
I think when you're looking at a shared future, right, having one vision, having one mission is very much important. While our friend said that, okay, right, that at the channel partner, the new generation that comes in, right, needs to be brought into and has to actually imbibe the culture or has to see a future. I think a lot depends upon also, right, within the OEMs as well. We have also new members coming in from multiple places or from other organizations or moving in from another role to another role. I think that is also one key part that is there, is maintaining the consistency in terms of decisions. And that is the very, very critical aspects. We may point fingers at our channel partners saying that the new generation is not in sync or does not see a future. That's good, right? That's a point made. But even within organizations, OEMs also, when you have multiple influx of people coming in from various roles, there has to be a consistency in terms of decision making. And that can only come in when the entire organization is well connected, right? And is also well connected towards the customer, which is the internal customer, and that is the channel partner. Dealer councils have played a big role here. Communication with the channel partner plays a big role. Communication within the company in terms of addressing the internal customer's need plays a big role here. I would say these are very, very critical aspects towards building a very, very healthy relationship. And we have experienced this. And what I have seen exactly is, or what we have experienced, whenever you bring the challenge out to your channel partner, they come up with solutions. And I think that's the beautiful part of this relationship is that, yes, we live each other's challenges, and then we are able to co-create a future. So consistency will only come in when there is a good amount of communication within the OEMs and within the dealerships and across. And that is the most important part. Yes, revenues will grow only at a particular rate, depending upon how the economy is prospering or what are the innovations happening, whatever the changes are happening. But managing the investment of a channel partner, managing their costs, I think the biggest insights have to come in from the OEM, because it is the OEM which creates the business model. Yes, the channel partners definitely live the business model, but it is the OEM that creates a business model, and it has to be co-created. We have to look forward towards moving to new ways of selling, digital, which I talked about, looking at exactly smaller retail formats. In fact, looking at captive finance companies, which can help and provide financial resources to our channel partners, looking forward towards giving them assistance in terms of trying to help in terms of also in terms of needs when it comes over like crisis. Take example, like, for example, we're talking about margins. Yes, margins are very much important because that is what a dealer gets for the services that he provides to the customer. Sharing of margin, I think, is a big issue. I think that needs to be addressed, that yes, towards that, does the margin needs to be shared towards providing a customer promotion in the marketplace? I think that's a big question mark, which OEMs have to also address it out. I'm being on the side of the OEM because why? I would like to live, and I live the life of a channel partner because he is my internal customer. And if we do so, I think then we can have a good shared future. That's my thing.
Thank you, Mr. Srivastava. Let me go to the final round of question, and this I've just summed up something for you, Vinkesh ji. What comes out from the OEMs? Number one, the question on transparency remains, one of the biggest issue, and that's probably one of the biggest hindrance when we talk about scalability. Rakesh Sharma ji just mentioned why Indian dealership or dealer principals cannot have such a large network. Why can't they be listed at the bourses? Why can't they have big investment? Why can't they be professionally run? These are some of the questions that has come out. Then there's a big question of how and why the next generation is not keen on taking this business ahead, and why they cannot play the role of leader at this point in time in terms of giving input to the OEMs, and also probably devise a new strategy in terms of running the business. How are you looking at these points that is being raised by the OEMs, especially the transparency part and scalability?
Nabil, I agree. This is one issue which, as an association, we are also handling. There are a lot of things. See, as of today, when any of the dealer's son studies outside and he comes up, his mind doesn't work on a 9 to 5 job or a 10 to 7 dealership job. He's always thinking of some startup, creating something. Whosoever has come back to the dealership, we have seen many fallouts after 2 3 years. They're going back, and what one survey we did with those some of them came out that in the dealership actually the creativity is killed. So basically, it's a Me Too products. It's a Me Too dealership. The norms, CII norms are same. The uniform is same. The process is same. What is the dealer's role? He has to provide funds. He has to provide manpower. He has to just manage the HR. He's a very good HR role and a good financial controller. Whereas as of the young generation, they want to try something. They want to create something. They want to move out of the fixed processes and do something and make their name. So if a city has two dealership and they think that we'll do the similar thing, so like if Maruti has two dealership in one city and both the dealers work on the similar platform, similar process, how can a dealer make his image more better for the customers to come in? There are a lot of things. Obviously, there are digital. You get your social presence. You have a better customer relationship. Those are things. But as of today, the youngsters think out of the box. They are not wanting to think on this way. They want to go ahead in the M&A version. They want to, like Rakesh said, they want to launch a public company. But there are in India, the kind of dealerships we run, these are things which are still a taboo. Very limited. Opportunities are huge. If you want to count, you can count what 10, 20 big corporate houses in India which are managing dealerships as of today.
What
And
about the transparency part?
so on the transparency front, I feel things are now opening up. So 2 years before, there were a lot of different things which were happening, but we have learned a bad way. I agree. Like 300 dealerships went bust, and then banks coming up heavily, giving the compulsory for funding. You need the collateral. So we have all the dealers have learned in I say in a crisis way. But as of today, I feel most of the dealers, I cannot commit on the 100%, but 90% of the dealers have understood that financial prudence is the top important priority for a dealer to survive. So I'll tell you, even with pandemic, sales down by around 30% or 40%, depending on OEM to OEM, the dealers are still making break even. So that is all because support of OEM, I agree. But additionally, they have learned thing that this is a very glamorous job. Agreed, it's a glamorous industry.
So
But
you
unless
are
and until the
breaking even in sales, but you are earning in service. Is there
Nabil,
over
not
dependence
not
on service, and that probably sometimes hurts the customers also?
no, no, no. I cannot say what you are saying is right as of today because the vehicles are not driven as similar as pre-COVID levels. So the service is also down.
I'm
So
not
we are
talking about
down. So
pre-COVID era. I'm talking about overall. Is there too much of dependence on workshops and services to earn profitability for dealer partner?
So I feel Nabil, 5 years hence, you must be listening that service is a component which services the sales also. But I feel in the past 5 years, you must have listened a lot about additional revenue. Nobody talks about service supporting sales. There was a concept of service absorption ratio where service used to take care of the fixed cost of sales. It's nothing now that now the talking of additional revenue, like said, how do we go ahead with the insurance thing, the renewal part, open renewal, not even your business, the other business, finance part, accessories part. There are a lot of additional revenues which we can think of. So it's not more on emphasis on services. It's all across where dealers are becoming viable as of today. And transparency, it is there. It is there now. 90% or more than 90% dealers have become very transparent, and even the manufacturers have
More
come
than
up to support
90%.
us. So there are some black sheeps. Nobody can commit that. So
But I
obviously,
don't think
even
it's still 90% because we worked very closely. But I think that's one point, Vinkesh, you really need to work with your, colleagues or dealer network. That's very big pain point that everybody continue to point out. I'll come to you, Shashank ji. The way Vinkesh puts it, that the next generation is not at all attracted towards a mundane kind of work profile that dealership offers. But don't you think with the changing time, a lot is changing there, a lot of excitement, a lot of new thing can be done there, a lot of uniqueness can be brought in the retailing business also? And how will you encourage the next generation to take this ahead?
Yeah, I think Guleria ji pointed out at the beginning that the new generation seems to be a little different, and that's always the case. Our generation would have been different from the previous one, and the new one would be different. So, having said that, I think I have seen a lot of the new generation also equally involved in the businesses. So it's not as if all the new generation is going away from auto. And secondly, as you rightly pointed out, Nabil, the auto industry, retail industry itself is changing very fast. I mentioned at the beginning, mobility as a service is evolving, and therefore the role of dealerships is going to be even more important, not less important, as some people say. So I think there is enough opportunity for the younger generation. And to that extent, I think it's a mistake which we have made as OEMs. While I think Rakesh mentioned about this father-son relationship, etc. And some people point out it's a big brother versus smaller brother. But I think it is more about.
Do you also agree with Mr. Rakesh Srivastava's point that OEMs are the business creators?
No, not really. I think he said co-creators. I think that's a better thing. Later he said co-creator, and I think I agree with that co-creation bit. And earlier people used to say a father-son relationship or big brother, small brother, but I think it's basically twin brothers. So it is like together we need to grow, because it's not as if any OEM has flourished without, and as Rakesh said, they give birth. And I don't think so, because both of them are born at the same time. You can't do business just by having a production facility. You need to sell, and that selling cannot happen without the dealers. So I think it's a more of a twin brother sort of relationship. So I think the point I was making before Nabil, you interrupted, was that the young generation, it's a mistake which OEMs probably made. We somehow have not really looked at the succession planning at the dealerships, which while we are like separate entities, and like it's a principal to principal relationship, but the way we do succession planning within our organization, it's done in a way which is quite different, because dealerships are more like a personal ownership sort of model. So the next generation is the de facto owner most of the time. And there, I believe we need to tell them about the opportunities which are available. As you rightly pointed out, it's going to be really fantastic. I would say it would be really new things which will come up, which will more than satiate the requirements of the younger generation. We don't give it out to that. And Maruti Suzuki, we started a second generation training program. It's a 2-year training program where we get the next generation to be with Maruti every day as an employee almost like an employee, in the sense they have to do 9 to 7 or 6 or whatever time, and they live with us, they work with us, and we give them the opportunity. They can see what opportunities are ahead of them. And I'm quite happy that most of the people in Maruti Suzuki who have gone through the second generation training, they're actually very much active in the dealerships today. And while Vinkesh ji was talking, I was just thinking, and Guleria ji also, and I think Guleria ji made a strong point and a very right point. The new generation thinks differently. There are instances, and one live example I can give. There is one dealer in Uttar Pradesh, very good dealer. He has 2 daughters. The daughters have studied abroad. They don't want to do this and go to the small place where probably Vinkesh is very aware of that place, and they would really like to be part of the but not really go into that details of the dealership operation being in that small place. So we have those type of obviously issues, and I think Guleria ji referred to that. But on the part of the excitement, the new opportunities, I think it's a problem which OEMs need to be more interactive with the dealer second generation to tell them of the vast opportunities which are available, which can satisfy their requirement that Vinkesh ji was talking about doing something, about creating something, not just coming to the office and do, as he said, the HR job and managing just people. So I think if we work together very closely, both OEM and the dealerships, even this issue can actually be resolved, and I think in many cases being resolved as well.
Well put. I think it is also that the dealership business should be looked towards professionally managed, not just ownership management. That is another way out. I think you should have right professionals to manage. If your kids or if your next generation is not interested, probably he can take up another business or another career. But if it is professionally managed, we have seen big corporations how they have remained successful or remained on the growth path as well. Let's conclude this exciting discussion. But before that, I would like to have 30 seconds quick remark from all of you on how do you see the OEM dealership relationship changing or improving, or what would be the direction looking at the scenario that we are talking about, more of digitization, e-retailing is going to happen, subscription model is going to come, where the shape of dealership or probably the requirement of dealership will slightly change. Electrification is coming up, that is going to change the way the relationship between OEM and dealership had in terms of workshops, maintenance, and all. So let's start with Mr. Guleria, then each one of you in 30 seconds.
Okay, if you have to ask me in 30 seconds, okay, I'll tell you like this. Normally in North, whenever there is a crisis or there's some problem, the kids come to the elders and the family, and you want to shoo them away. You will say HUP, HUP. But now the HUP definition has to be changed. We have to bring them closer by again saying HUP, but HUP means H is harmony, U is unity, and P is positivity. That's my.
Very good. Shashank ji, your thought.
Well, I think the relationship and the industry itself will change hugely, and at a much faster pace than what we have seen in the past. And there are going to be tectonic changes, both on the technology front, as far as product is concerned, as far as the process is concerned, digitalization, which we all spoke about, and also mobility as a service. Therefore, the OEM dealer relationship, I think, will evolve quite differently from what it has in the past. It will be more, as Rakesh said, co-creative. It will also be more collaborative, and it will be quite different for different OEMs. And some will be really successful. I hope Maruti Suzuki will be one of them. And some of them may not be as much. And therefore, we need to work very, very closely in a very transparent and trust environment that we all spoke about during the discussion.
Rakesh ji, your thoughts?
To me, there's a dynamic shift happening in terms of mobility, especially in terms of the way the customer needs or wants are being addressed now or changing now. Whether it is electrification, which is going to come in, or the shared mobility actually changed it for some time. Again, there is a different shift happening there. So the end user or the customer is changing. We have to jointly address it. There is no successful formula available anywhere in the world, let me tell you, right, to address this. What is required is co-creation. What is required is basically building a strong future. And towards that, we will be only able to do it when we internalize ourselves, when we step into the shoes of the customers, that is internal customer, our channel partner, and the channel partner is able to understand the changing needs in the marketplace, and he's able to bring it to us. And then we are able to bring in the right kind of a business model, whether it is creating, I say it is exactly as a captive finance company, or looking at different banking needs, or looking at subscription model, because a subscription model will change the entire retail financing dynamics in the marketplace as well. So there are changes which are happening, tectonic changes happening, plates are shifting, and the biggest challenge that we will face is understanding the new customer, because the new customer will define the internal customer of ours, and that will define how the OEMs will see a future. So we have to co-create it and coexist to co-create, I would say.
Coexist to co-create. Vinkesh, I'll give you more than 30 seconds. So what are your fears? What are your challenges when you see things changing the way we is right now?
The start, what I said, I request everybody to make your dealers a partner. So like it said, please hear, please listen and act upon it. So they are the front force. Like we are always coerced or taught by OEMs that we should take care about the manpower because they are our front line. How we handle them, that is the way they will handle the customer. So it's simple, like Rakesh ji said, we are their customer initial. So treated us as partners. I'll request again on my original part. If you everybody has a proper system, let's have a DAC across manufacturers, make it effective. I know it's not easy to get dealers because every OEM has a big dealer of 1,000 crores and a small dealer of a 60 crore turnover also. The thinkings are different, the problems are different. After becoming president, I came to know that a small dealer of a Pratapgarh of a two-wheeler and a Delhi dealer, they both have some different type of thinking and different types of issues. So we need an effective DAC to give the right point. And one more thing is dealers normally, like somebody said, they speak to you when they talk about you as a positive. They don't give you the exact feedback. So maybe in some DAC, dealers will open up and give you feedback. And I'll tell you that is the best way. You can hire any four big EY, Deloitte, anything. The kind of money you'll get to have a survey done, it's easier done with every quarter DAC. I can 100% say that. So my request again, we are your partners. Please handhold us to better profitability, better customer relationship, and better sales.
Thank you so much. Every good thing has to come to an end, and that's the end of this exciting panel discussion that we had. Just let me quickly sum up what is the outcome of this discussion. The OEMs feel that the transparency from the dealer's side is very important. OEM have also expressed their opinion that the dealership penetration has to be rationalized. There should not be a large number of dealership, unnecessary dealership opening up, reducing the profitability or growth potential of the dealer principals. We are talking about co-creating, and the most important of all is that the feedback of dealership should be taken in an organized way and act upon them also to have a better relationship between OEM and dealership and for a prolific business model. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining in ET Auto Retail Forum. Up next is a very exciting discussion. Please stay tuned to ET Auto Retail Forum, the 5th edition.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nabil.